Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So the big thing is that we do have brand new information today, really talking a little bit about what a lot of the people in Congress have now officially come out to speak in terms of what they really want to preach for when it comes to just the world of fourth stimulus checks. It might be a little bit repetitive, but there is a very big difference right now, because the big idea is that now they are changing or taking a huge change of pace to what they were originally trying to do, and now trying to come up with new ways to pass stimulus programs. So in today's update is I really just want to talk about what each of the politicians have now officially come out to say. AOC has recently now just come out to speak. Pramila Jayapal has come out to speak. Biden has been speaking throughout this entire time, and then also a lot of other just general fellow progressive Democrats and just people in Congress, even Nancy Pelosi. So I want to just talk about all of that stuff, and then of course also end with probably the most important thing that everyone here cares about, which is what's been going on in the world of just actual fourth stimulus programs meant to put money inside of our pockets. And I think that all of us, including me and including almost everyone here, pretty much cares the most about. So we're going to talk all about that, but let's get right to it. But as always, before we begin, consider smashing the like button. As always, consider subscribing and hitting the bell if you're interested in videos like this. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts, maybe suggestions, or honestly just really anything. It's always great to hear just from you guys in general. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So we're going to pretty much just start by talking about what each of the individual politicians really believe and have said about the situation. And then we're probably going to end by just talking about what Congress feels collectively and how everything ties together at the very end. So maybe to start with is really going to be about Joe Manchin. So Joe Manchin's situation right now, as most of you guys know, is that he's probably the biggest person or the most important person in terms of why the original fourth stimulus package struggled to really be able to gain approval. But what he has actually come out to really speak is I think the big idea behind it is that it's not that he's necessarily against doing fourth stimulus programs, but he's just very much against doing the specific fourth stimulus programs that are currently inside of the fourth stimulus bill. So for example is that he doesn't necessarily support the child tax credit, but I think the big idea is that it's not necessarily about the child tax program in general, but it's that he really just wants to raise the strictness so it doesn't feel like they're pretty much just giving out free money, especially to people that are actually genuinely very wealthy and maybe don't even necessarily need that money, but this is really more of just like a bonus check to really be able to help out. But there are also a lot of other subtle programs, like things like climate change, things about the environment, that he actually kind of relatively does actually genuinely care about. But now it's really just about trying to find maybe some balance and compromise between what he wants and all of the other people want. Now, one new information is that AOC did recently finally just come out to respond to everything related to what Joe Manchin has been speaking about right here. And what she basically is now saying is that she wants to blame everything that happened over the last just X period of time on Joe Manchin. But even more specifically, her specific argument is that she feels and has expressed that the reason why all of this stuff has struggled is really because, not just because of Joe Manchin, but because of his or what he has done being incredibly indecisive to try to really be able to clearly state what he actually wants inside of the fourth stimulus bill. So she essentially is just saying that until Joe Manchin can really give very decisive, answers to what he clearly wants, that's when they could move forward. Now, we do also have Pramila Jayapal, who also recently just come out, and she interestingly has another stance about it, where she feels like they should actually be taking certain programs within the package and trying to just now approve them individually through something that many people may or may not have heard of if you've been following around for a while now, but through an executive order. Essentially, the way this works is that there are actually technically several programs that you do actually have to get approved from Congress because they involve trying to create funding. However, there are also a lot of programs that you might be able to even just take money that already exist and try to redirect them in order to do something called an executive order. And this is something that President Biden actually has the most amount of power to, actually pretty much has the power to be able to do, but now we just have to see if he physically will do that particular something. Now, there are trade-offs to why there are pros and cons to doing this, so it's not always a very, very straight answer. For example, is that I do know on Biden's side is that he wants to try to create compromise because he thinks it's going to make it a little bit more unified inside of Congress, and then Pramila Jayapal wants to basically get him to essentially just try to go forward and approve other kinds of programs that they feel very much can be approved right now. This is actually technically what, if you guys have been following for a while, President Donald, well, former, but nonetheless, Donald Trump actually did, while I'm saying this, 2 years ago. Technically a little bit over 1 year ago because we're in 2022, but right around the very, very end of 2020, if you guys remember when the unemployment benefits, PUA, PUC, all those programs expired, Donald Trump did actually sign an executive order in order to try to extend unemployment for essentially about 6 weeks so that people can kind of continue onto the program. Doing this executive order does have limitations. That's why they can't just do it on forever, but it is definitely something that you can do to at least have something on the table. But now at this point, it's really about if they physically want to do it. But interestingly, because of all of the unity related stuff, that probably brings us to the next politician that we're really going to talk about, which is going to be Nancy Pelosi. So Nancy Pelosi right now is actually probably the most on the side of Biden in that she feels that the best move going forward is probably just to try to continue doing it the traditional way, so through reconciliation, but to try to maybe just do it in smaller bills. And I think that collectively, maybe this goes on to the just collectively whole picture right now, is that most politicians within Congress do feel like trying to preach for the smaller bills will probably genuinely really be the best move going forward from here. Now, maybe just some general information that I think is relatively interesting to share. Speaking of Nancy Pelosi, is that she actually recently, interestingly, just announced that she's now planning to try to run for re-elections. So this is important because what it really means is that she is one of the most powerful figures in Congress that has a lot of power in terms of when bills are not just being able to even just get approved, but even when we're even allowed to physically hold the vote inside of the House of trying to get bills approved. So she is one of the most powerful figures, and she is now thinking about trying to run for another term. I believe right now, wild to think, is that I think she's about like 81 years old, I think, and she's about to turn to 82, I believe, somewhat this year. I think by the end of this year. So she's going to essentially be, she's already in her 80s, and she's going to be closer to her 90s than her 80s now if she wins for another round when she gets out of, assuming that she doesn't run for election again. Otherwise, she actually would be literally running parts of the country in her 90s. But the big idea really about what this actually all means and ties together for stimulus checks and programs is that really the big thing right now that we're really trying to hope for is that now that they're trying to craft up and create a lot of different smaller bills, what it does mean is that we probably will start to get more information about what these bills actually involve, or what's actually physically included inside of these bills. There is almost definitely going to be a bill for child tax credit, very likely for Social Security, very, very likely, of course, for a lot of the other programs. Not totally confident, admittedly, about unemployment, I will admit that. There is a possibility that they may be trying to do very focused stimulus checks. That actually is something that's very, very probable, and we're already kind of seeing it in certain places as well. I know in yesterday's video, I did make a video that talked a little bit about how some people are going to potentially now be getting an actual approved $500 stimulus check for very, very targeted people. But of course, we already talked about that in the last video, so I'll put that at the very, very end screen if you guys are interested in checking that out. I think the name of that video is literally just called New Programs because it talks about that $500 check, but also about a lot of other programs that hopefully can provide relief during a time when there's still a lot of need inside of our country, and actually technically the world, but of course we're just very focused on the country specifically. But really the bottom line is that that's what I really wanted to share in today's update. So lots of stuff that we are hearing, so that is the really great news, but also lots of stuff that we are still waiting for. So if you guys found that relatively insightful and haven't done so, maybe consider smashing the like button, consider subscribing, hitting the bell, and as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts, or honestly just really anything at all. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well. Happy Friday if you're watching this on release date, and have a great week. And also stay warm if you're in the Northeast because we have a snowstorm coming soon. See you guys again.